Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Chris Brown. I'm a sergeant in our Education and Outreach Bureau at the Grand Forks Police Department. Um, I've been at this for about 15 years. Um, some of my some of the jobs that I've gotten to do prior to my current position, I was a school resource officer for 3 years, so I have a few different things that I've seen, obviously with internet safety and juveniles over those 3 years. I've also been a part of some different special teams in the police department. So I've gotten to get some different exposure. I've worked all the shifts, so I've kind of taken all of the calls. So I kind of got a well-rounded little bit of pieces of information from that. But I'll just give a quick disclaimer for everyone that's here. I don't pretend to be an expert on any of this stuff. We just know what we're instructing here and what federal guidelines are, what some of those different things are. And then I'm pulling also from that experience as a school resource officer. We have a couple different programs that we teach at the elementary level in fifth grade, and then another one at the middle school level. We teach winning decisions, which is some internet safety, some making good decisions, uh, different things of that nature. The middle program, managing interpersonal and day-to-day life experiences, that's touching more on what is a healthy relationship, how are we treating others online, like how does that look, pictures live forever on the internet, that kind of conversation. Trying to teach kids some of those skills so that they can be a little more resilient or know how to get out of a situation, especially cyberbullying type things, which is extremely common at the middle school level, unfortunately. All right. So just based off of quite a few, I guess there were 10 questions that were basically given to me, and then one that I kind of left off, but I'll talk about after the presentation, the formal presentation, just because um, it's in reference to how do we protect our children by not placing photos online or placing photos online. Um, and we'll kind of delve into that, and we kind of have a discussion. I kind of figure with that question because it's kind of 50-50. But overall, we're going to learn about how to protect our child from online, or our children from online predators. I want to at least get to the point of identifying cyberbullying and potentially how to prevent it. I also want to get to how are we communicating with our children about our cell phone usage. I have a 13-year-old, a now 13-year-old that has her cell phone, and we deal with it every day. We're setting parameters and that usage set it seems like every day. So and then learn about problematic or misleading applications. We've all heard stories about how kids can hide things, how adults can hide things. So we'll go kind of over a few of those, few of the main ones that I found, and then kind of what to look for in terms of childhood behaviors. How are people acting as opposed to normal? Um, we will touch on what human trafficking and sex trafficking is and what to potentially look for. A lot of it's going to tie in with some of the online predator kind of stuff and what we are allowing our children to have access to on a normal day-to-day basis. But we'll cover some of those signs, especially in an adoptive type setting. Obviously, there's going to be some youth that have been transient or have been moved around quite a bit, and there's probably going to be some unfortunate backstories on some of those folks. And then lastly, identifying applications that you can use to help monitor cell phone usage. There's one that my spouse and I we use all the time that I'll cover. I really like that one, but I'm not necessarily endorsing one or the other. Um, it's just something that I'm comfortable with, that we're able to, that I'll be able to walk through comfortably with everyone here. So, all right. So to get through some of these definitions here so that we kind of understand what we're talking about, A lot of times, um, we're not quite on the same page as what constitutes criminal violations or what cyberbullying actually is. For our purposes today, cyberbullying is the use of technology to harass, threaten, embarrass, or target another person. Um, Only threats are online threats and mean, aggressive, or rude text, tweets, posts, or messages all count. Um, I think sometimes we depersonalize some of these things. I'm sure if anybody follows us on Facebook, we'll post something and you'll see just all the negative that's in there. Um, People are mean to each other. They're saying, calling each other names. That stuff lives on forever. So all of those type of interactions count when it comes to cyberbullying. Uh, People are posting personal information, pictures or videos that are designed to hurt or embarrass someone. Um, as a school resource officer at a middle school level, it was quite unfortunate the amount of times that, say, somebody had a picture taken of them and it made them look funny, or even if it was an average normal picture that this person would have had of themselves, that people are passing a photo around saying, "Hey, this is look at so and so. Doesn't she look silly in this?" And then it's the back and forth online. Um, what I used to tell the kids all the time, and I should probably remind my children of this too, because sometimes I kind of forget to share this with my children. But we had it good. Those of us that lived before social media was an integral part of our daily lives. Um, I I had bullying situations grow up. I was smaller, a little bit nerdy sometimes, and every once in a while, yeah, I'd get bullied. But it was at school. There was no online anything at that point in time, so I was able to go home, escape it, jump on my bike, throw on the TV, do whatever, and escape for X number of hours. Granted, yes, we had to go back to it during the school day, but it was manageable. You had a break from it. You could do whatever you needed to do. In today's current climate, kids feel like they have to be online all the time, or if somebody sends a message, they have to respond right away. If somebody says something about them, that they have to address it right away. And these are conversations that I have to have with my own daughter, my oldest. You don't need to respond right away. You can ignore this. You don't have to deal with it. In fact, let's just take the phone away for a little bit and give you a break. Let's do something different. So during all my presentations for as a school resource officer, um, I would always make sure that I let the kids know that a lot of times we kind of jokingly tell kids that, like, well, we had it so rough when we were kids. We had to walk uphill both ways to get to school. You guys don't have to deal with any of this kind of stuff anymore. Um, they're fighting a different battle. It's just it looks different. We can't fully understand it, uh, but they're exposed to stressors on a more continual 24/7 schedule than they should be. And our jobs as parents, caregivers, guardians, however you want to phrase it, is to kind of help them navigate and make sure that they're being taken care of, because those pressures are hard. We've all we've all been there. Human trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. Um, we're not generally seeing this probably around here with kids necessarily. Human trafficking in this context is going to be more of um, it's a worker from a different country that comes into work at a restaurant. They might get their documents taken away from them. Maybe they have to live in an apartment. We've had some different stories in town here where there was one apartment that had double digit persons living in it that all worked at the same restaurant, and they weren't being paid. they were just basically given a roof over their head. That would be a type of human trafficking in that context. Sometimes it's a threat of force, sometimes it's promises of education, sometimes it's promises of um, like an ad agency that says, hey, we'll do this, this, and this for you, but you have to do this, this, and this. But then they're threatening if you try to leave or you're trying to do whatever else. Sex trafficking is a subset of this human trafficking. That's defined as a commercial sex act that's induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person is induced to perform such act has not attained 18 years of age. So essentially speaking, we're looking at those situations where somebody is not willingly involved in the sex trade. It's a shockingly high number of people that are involved in the sex trade that are being trafficked. So it's not a small amount. It's actually like that 70 to 80% range of persons that would want to get out. They're just not able to. With children, again, my time as a school resource officer, there were quite a few hard moments where we would see families, and I won't name the schools or any names or anything like that, but there were families that would just disappear for weeks on end. They had no money. They had no means to buy jewelry, clothes, anything of that nature. But they would make trips from the city of Grand Forks down to the Twin Cities, and wouldn't tell anybody, wouldn't notify the school. And then all of a sudden the kids would show up back at school. So me as this middle school resource officer, I am greeting everyone as they come in. And this particular student, she would come in with new clothes, new shoes, new jewelry, maybe a phone, something of that nature. She had like a couple phones, I think, at one time. Those are all kind of signs that I'll go over later, where she's potentially the victim of human trafficking, sex trafficking. And those are extremely hard to prove on our end, but you can kind of put the pieces together. And yeah, I always worried about that kiddo. But any questions so far, or is that all pretty straightforward? Okay, I can't see anybody right now, so just in case. You can still hear me?
Yep, you're good. There's no questions yet that I see.
Awesome. All right, so we'll get into online predators here. Some different things that we can do to kind of help with online safety. Communicate with our children. If there's one theme that you're going to see over and over and over again in this is communication. Having that relationship with your child or adopted child, however we're phrasing this, we need to have them be willing to come to us, or us be able to ask them questions, confront them on things, and have not be as adversarial. I understand I have a 13-year-old, so like it's going to be adversarial at sometimes, but we need to make sure that we're there for them. Discussing that internet safety with our children, I'll kind of go over some different things to look for in a couple other sides too, but who is this person actually speaking to? So if my 13-year-old is online, I don't know what platform we'll say it, we'll Snapchat, whatever it might be, and they are speaking to this person that they've never met. This person says, I'm such and such age, I go to such and such school, we should be friends. And I haven't done my due diligence as a parent on setting those boundaries, setting the settings on the actual application. Now we may be allowing an imposter of sorts to be in communication with our child. One story that I have, when I was this was just before I was a school resource officer, but there was a 14-year-old student that was from the surrounding area. So not in Grand Forks, but in the surrounding area. And she was irritated with her parents. There was a fight. I can't remember what the fight was about, but the student went downstairs into the basement where their room was, uh, got on this app called Whisper. I don't think it exists anymore. But basically, the way that that app worked was if you had something that you wanted to talk about, you could throw out a comment anonymously out to the universe. In this case, it was something to the effect of, I'm really mad at my parents. I just wish that I could get away from here. This gentleman who claimed to be 19, this girl was 14, this gentleman claimed to be 19, so obviously still not acceptable, but this is the age that he claimed. He turned out to actually be 25. He clicked on that comment. They started communicating back and forth. He started kind of building that trust with this juvenile, manipulating this juvenile into thinking that he cared about her, that he was on her side, that she was totally right in everything that she was saying, and that he would come and pick her up because he was able to do so. This was like I think it was like a Sunday night, and like these communications were starting at like 9 and they went to about 11 something p.m., almost midnight. So then this gentleman that was 25 actually was a flight instructor at UND. He was no criminal record. There was nothing attached with him at all. If you just looked at the face of it, he's gainfully employed. Again, no criminal record. You'd walk past him on the street and you wouldn't notice anything else about this guy. Just an average looking person. Engaged, had a fiance, but he left his job, went and picked up this juvenile, and then proceeded to commit several sexual acts against this child. So it was extremely unfortunate, but it was one of those situations where we can kind of learn a lesson from that, where how are we communicating with our child? How are we establishing those boundaries? Who are we letting communicate? And what are those parameters on those applications? Right, so I already touched into the determining who you will allow your children to communicate with. One thing that I want to touch on for certain with that point is let's make sure that whoever we are allowing our child to communicate with, it's somebody that we met, somebody that we can verify is who they say they are. There's a lot of people out there that are looking for some of those vulnerabilities, and we just need to be mindful of it. We still obviously needed to let our children go out and explore, do kind of the things that we did as children, just in a digital setting, but safely. Limit the kinds of devices and apps utilized. If we are allowing our child to have a cell phone, let's make sure that we know the cell phone just as much as they do, or at least close to it. Our kids are always going to be better with this stuff than we are, but let's at least be ready to be able to look through the phone, be able to identify where applications may be hidden, what was set, what we've allowed them to download. Are there extra applications that are on there? And then those applications that are actually loaded onto the phone, is there anything that we don't recognize? Even if it's something that we do recognize, have we gone through it? Have we seen what that history is if we go into the settings on whatever application that might be? Use technology to your advantage. So again, we're going to be checking into what apps they can use and how long can they be on. So are we giving a juvenile with still a brain that's formulating, still these decision-making processes that are still happening, so they're going to make mistakes. My time as a middle school resource officer, like children will make those mistakes and they will make them repeatedly. So we have to be there kind of in a constructive, helpful setting and make sure that they are getting what they need. Part of that is determining how long they can actually be on their phone, or iPad or laptop, whatever it might be. The longer that they're on, the longer that they'll be able to kind of access potentially some of those problematic places, sites, whatever it might be. And that could start becoming an issue. Pay attention to some of the warning signs. Children will, unfortunately, just like adults, hide something that's embarrassing to them. Probably more from an adult standpoint. You would see that as people who've been victims of fraud, people who've had things, they've been duped by a gift card scheme. They were going to do this, this, or this, and they spent $1,000 on iTunes gift cards and sent them to the king of Nigeria somewhere. There's these things happen, and we aren't told about them all the time because people are embarrassed. With children, we're looking for some of the withdrawing or changes in their mood. So if they're utilizing social media, they're using your phone, and they seem a little more moody, they seem a little bit more irritated. We know our children best, or we know how they would normally act. It's okay to start that conversation. Hey, I've noticed that you're a little down, or you're a little more angrier than normal. Is there anything going on? Is there anything you need help with? So if we can try to phrase some of these things in a supportive manner, as opposed to are you sending pictures? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? We're going to hopefully potentially be able to get a connection and help them through whatever embarrassing situation that might be. Another one on here is report potential abuse. So we don't know what we don't know. If there are things going on with an application, if there are things that are going on that are potentially criminal in nature, it's okay to let's stop the use of whatever device that is, whatever social media platform that is. And if there's something criminal that's going on, call law enforcement, call the school if it's something that's school related, especially if the device that's being used is a school issued laptop or whatever it might be, because I'm sure there are some of those in here. They have the ability to look at every bit of activity that has ever happened on those devices. So we know who they're connecting with, we know the timestamps, we know all of these different things, that if there is something criminal or there is something that the school needs to address, that can happen, and there's a good digital record of all that. And the other thing too about reporting potential abuse is you're being an advocate for your child. These things are embarrassing. If we've shared a picture that we shouldn't, or if we've said something that we shouldn't, or somebody's saying something to us, nobody wants that stuff out. Sometimes it takes a trusted adult, a trusted friend, somebody to be there. All right, so part of the, if we go back from the online predators to now transitioning to some of the sex trafficking concerns, obviously some of these people that are online that are trying to find some of these victims, some of it is potentially sex trafficking. If we are looking at the characteristics of somebody that is trafficked or there's been attempts, this person may be overly fearful, submissive, tense, or paranoid. If you ever see somebody out in public and they're deferring to, say, a male figure or a mother figure or something of that nature without answering the question directly, or they're looking at them to answer questions, that could be an indicator of trafficking. This isn't going to always look like your standard movie set pimp type scenario. Like, we've seen situations where it's a mother and daughter. There's a lot of financial problems, and the daughter is used to procure money or do whatever else that way. You may see some physical injuries, brandings, or tattoos. Unfortunately, that does happen where, I mean, these people are treated so horribly. They are treated now as property. They are tagged. They are so and so's property. Um, and it's extremely unfortunate, but it starts small and these things kind of grading up. Inappropriate clothing. If we have a juvenile that is extremely sexualized, is showing wearing clothing that's way too revealing, it could just be the age, but we need to kind of see that in a broader scope. Is this something that we need to be watchful for? Um, if kids are left alone too often, um, obviously, I mean, parents have to work. Sometimes kids are going to be left alone. But if they're left alone and there's no answer as to who's going to be watching over them or what's going to be going on when they're there by themselves, uh, that's where we're going to start seeing some potential issues. Overly sexual for age. As a school resource officer, I had sixth graders at that middle school level that were extremely sexual in their comments. It could have been the media that they watched or the music that they listened to. It could have been things from siblings that they were hearing from older ones. Um, but if they know pieces of information, if they know terms, if they act in a certain way that's overly sexual, that could be an indicator. Multiple phones or social media accounts, email addresses. Obviously, I have two phones just because everybody has access to me all the time. But if you have a student, a youth that has two phones, that's not normal. Um, there could be hiding something on one, or it could be a phone that's kept on them so that they can be contacted at all times. Social media accounts, we need to, especially as parents, as caregivers, we need to be cognizant of the fact that kids are smart. Oftentimes, kids are a lot smarter than we are when it comes to some of this stuff. They might have more than one social media account. They might have one that they can show you, but they might have another one that hides the pictures that they're posting, or that guy that they met online, or that girl that they met online that they're communicating with that told them not to tell anyone. Um, maybe it's a threat, maybe it's I'll hurt your family, whatever it is. Um, but we need to be cognizant of that and be willing to look through a phone, be willing to look through search histories, things of that nature. Email address is another one. Those are super easy to set up. You can set up a Google account in no time. Um, and I know there's a lot of kids, especially even at a young level, that would be able to do that. Signs of unusual wealth. I kind of already covered that one with that juvenile that I had at the middle school level. It's not normal for a family that has nothing to all of a sudden now you have a child coming in with $200 shoes, jewelry, a new cell phone, like blinged up cell phone cases, like top end clothes. That is not normal behavior. I know what the parents could afford in that circumstance, and that's not something that's really explainable. So, kind of dovetailing into some of those different social media accounts, email addresses, things of that nature. If we talk about social media in general, I know one of the questions on here was um, sharing your location. Um, we should always be turning our location settings off unless for some reason you want your family to know where you are at all times. Snapchat is a good example. I don't have Snapchat, but my spouse does. And all of our family uses that as a family communication for get-togethers and whatever else. But that location setting, one of my relatives doesn't hide that location. They keep that location setting on. So if we are looking to see where this person is at, and how long it's going to take them to get to whatever destination. Well, we can just pull up Snapchat, click on this person's account, and then find, oh, well, they're an hour from this destination. We know exactly where they're at, and then kind of keep tabs on that. So if we have juveniles that have Snapchat or whatever other social media platforms that are allowing for that permission to happen, now we are potentially giving a stranger who may be pretending to be somebody else, maybe pretending to be younger than they are, some other ulterior, whatever their motives are. Now we're giving a stranger that potential permission to see where our children are at. But for Snapchat in general, or for phones in general, I kind of laid it out here under that first heading. But if you go into your main settings on your phone, locate the app that you're interested in, find the permissions under that app, and then there should be a location sharing function that you can toggle off. Just make sure that's off. You may need to look through it a couple times, but just make sure that that is followed. And then the apps themselves, you can restrict that further, and make sure that we're not allowing new friends at this time, or it's only these type of, or this type of person, whatever it might be. Another one with social media that parents tend to, I think, feel pressured to allow their children on too early. But there's a lot of social media platforms that say age of 13 or age of 12. And even that, I think, is a little too young for my own particular taste or concerns. But let's be mindful of those age restrictions and make sure that we aren't giving in to our kids, making sure that they are protected from our end. Because I can live with my child being angry with me if it means that I keep them safe within reason there. Again, we can look through those settings in individual apps. There's certain applications that allow you to change the algorithms in those, in their formulas, however they do them. I'm not that smart, but some people are when they create these algorithms. If you don't want to allow sexually explicit content or whatever those parameters are, you can set those in some of the TikToks and things of that nature. Some applications may not keep photos or videos. So obviously the big one with that one is Snapchat. Those videos and images, they go out, they're off your phone. It feels like there's no consequences to it. At the middle school level, this happens all the time. People will send stuff and it doesn't exist anymore, so it didn't happen. The consequence isn't there. The problem is somebody that's receiving it, screenshot, they can share that screenshot with everyone. And we had to deal with that a lot in my tenure in there. And then lastly, on the social media, on this one, is allow known persons to be connected online. Even if I know Richard so-and-so, if Richard so-and-so sends me a friend request or sends one of my children a friend request, I don't know that's that actual individual. So if that's somebody that's requesting that access, we need to make sure that we're following up with that person directly and saying, hey, I got a friend request. Is this true? I'm not sure. And then just covering our bases that way. Because it doesn't have to happen right now. We can delay and make sure that we're keeping our kiddo safe. All right, some helpful programs. I already kind of alluded to Family Link. So if you have a Gmail account, if you have a Google account, this is actually pretty helpful. It's recommended for anybody under 13 years of age to have this kind of control over their phone or their devices. But even with that 13, we can still utilize it. We can still go through and make sure that we are setting our parameters. So with this family link, we can set time limits for different applications. So um, one of my biggest pet peeves with my own 13-year-old was the use of YouTube. It was just constant scrolling through um, the reels and whatnot that were popping up. And to help kind of control that, we can turn it off and make sure she has no access using this app, or we can set a time limit for when we know that we're going to be around and there's not going to be that algorithm kicking in different videos that we may not have wanted our child to have access to. We can modify what websites or content you can view on there. And then we can actually, we'd still have to go back to the phone. We still have to physically go back to the phone, check through the search history. If it's YouTube, we still have to go back and check through the search history. Um, I'm not saying you have to do that all the time, uh, but we need to kind of have those conversations, and I'll kind of cover some other stuff here in a little couple later slides about the communication, but we're still going to need to physically be present, grab that phone, be able to look through and ensure that those parameters that we set are being followed, because video content creators are pretty sneaky with how they can tag their videos to try to get things through. Set blackout times to stop any access to a device. This is a phenomenal tool. We can set it, I don't know when bedtime is for each individual person that's viewing this or will view this, but say if you don't want your child on their phone from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m., you set that blackout time from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. and they can't use it at all. It's a brick. They can't do anything with it. They just set it on a charger, hopefully somewhere in a public accessible place away from their room. And then there's just no access to it. I haven't seen an end around that, but I'm sure somebody's come up with something. But again, we still need to manually check and make sure that those rules are being followed. A similar one from the Apple side of things, I have an iPhone from work. I don't like it, so I don't know a lot about how to use an iPhone, but they have a similar setting. It's free. Castido was another one that was recommended for over 13 years of age. It kind of gives your child a little bit more freedom. So they're still advancing. They obviously need to have some freedoms. They need to have some privacy with limitations. So some hidden or vault app information. These are software programs that allow for users to hide certain apps, photographs, files, or videos. Um, Unfortunately, these are mostly password or Face ID locked. So um, it's one of those where you would maybe you would for sure have to have that communication with your child about passwords, sharing their password with you so that you can have access to all of the different things that are on that phone or iPad, whatever it might be. Um, the With the pin or the gesture to open, that's even harder. I mean, somebody could make up whatever it is and have that setting. So that's, again, communication. Like I said, when I first started, communication is key. We need to have that trust. We need to have that open relationship with our child to make sure that we're able to cover it. Some of the main ones that I saw that were popping up were Calculator Vault, Keep Safe, Hide It Pro. That sounds a little too obvious, but one thing that was kind of shocking to me was Apple had an update where there was a forced download of this journal application, and it allows for secure storage. If a juvenile updates their iPhone, they would have the ability to set a passcode, and only they can get into it. And that's a problem because Apples are really good at not being cracked. They're really hard to get into. And I'm in law enforcement, so some of the dangers of hidden apps. Obviously, the inappropriate content. Is this child taking pictures of themselves that they shouldn't, that are maybe sexually explicit? Are they sharing those? Is there communication settings, programs that are in a hidden folder, or it's a hidden app? Who are they having those conversations with? There's really no good reason to have a hidden app on a juvenile's phone, probably for an adult either. So that would be a huge warning sign right there. Um, we just can't have that. That to me is a violation of that mutual respect, that contract that you would have with your child on the usage of that phone. Cyberbullying, either whether the victim or they are the bully, um, they might be hiding the fact that they are being mean to others online, and this is the way they do it. Addiction, if we don't have a way to track what these kids are doing and how long they're on the phone, it's something that we can't see. Um, we run into the issue of addiction where they want to keep using it. It's now become a problem. The erosion of trust, once they have something like that, it's really hard for somebody to earn that trust back. We're always going to be kind of wondering, okay, what are they hiding now? And that's an unfortunate side effect. But communication is key. Cyberbullying, we deal a lot with cyberbullying. Our school resource officers still do a lot with cyberbullying. It's really easy to say something mean when you're not standing face to face in front of them. The consequences don't feel as real. Threats are easy to make. It's really easy to be tough online versus when you have that person right in front of you. The amount of contact that can happen is just absolutely insane. So if you have a victim who is now being contacted repeatedly, it could be one person, it could be a group of persons that are committing these acts, and it's relentless. If that child doesn't have the ability to turn off the device, block somebody, or tell their parents, now they're just getting a barrage from a lot of people, and it's extremely harmful to the mental health, the chronic stress of that victim. They're just living in it and they can't escape it. Um, there are consequences to the people that are perpetuating these acts. Um, if it's school related or if it's deemed to be school related, it's getting in there somehow. There can be some school suspensions. There can be some suspensions maybe from their sports teams, something of that nature. If there are any threats that are made online, that could be potentially deemed as harassment. That harassment is two or more unwanted communications that serve no legitimate purpose. Disorderly conduct could potentially be a charged offense, but those are getting a little bit harder to charge. In terms of the amount of times that bullies are held accountable, I'll admit it's pretty low. It's kind of hard to prove. One of the other things that we run into also is I always tell people to have their feet in a legal place before they're making an act or making an accusation. And a lot of times, what I was finding as a school resource officer was the the victim that I'm speaking to at that moment had kind of started a fight or perpetuated a fight or was arguing and conducting themselves in a not so good fashion, and it's just kind of escalated, and now they don't want a part of it. So if we can teach our children some of those social skills, some of those abilities to not allow themselves to be a part of the problem and just be that beacon of positivity, that light, um, that'll go a long way.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do you typically need to be a certain age to be charged with anything in regards to cyberbullying?
So if there is a criminal charge, they have to be at least 10 years old. Um, but it's the way this new legislatures, the new laws that have come out make it really hard, especially if something's on a school setting. It's really hard to charge a criminal violation for some of those acts. When it's happening outside of a school setting, it's a little bit easier. But the juvenile justice system is seen as a restorative approach, a rehabilitative. It's not a punitive. So they're not charging fines. They're not putting somebody in detention for however long. It's more so what does the family need for help? It could be a letter. It could be a training program of some kind, depending on what the offense is. So, or restorative justice. That's a big one where you have the offended party being amenable to sitting across from the person that's been tormenting them and telling them, this is how this made me feel. This is what happened. And then the other party would be able to kind of talk through that with a third party mediator, an adult. So
Thank you.
yep. So again, what can we do? Tell someone. We get these reports all the time. If it's especially school related, it's a little bit easier. We can have the school resource officer kind of do a one-on-one with the victim. If that victim wants us to make contact with the potential bully, that's more than doable. We do that kind of stuff all the time. When it comes to outside of that fact, it's a little bit harder because oftentimes it doesn't rise to a criminal level. It's just kids kind of back and forth arguing, that kind of stuff, and makes it a little bit harder. Walking away, but not necessarily walking away in a physical sense. We are mentally walking away from what's going on online. It's hard, but we can turn our phone off. We can close that app. We can get our child away from whatever that is and give them a break. Let's give them something else to think about. Let's get them active, get them out. But it's hard. And we may not always be told what's going on. They're just acting differently. They're mad, they're angry, sad, whatever. Don't retaliate or respond. People feed off of this kind of stuff. If you see the vitriol that's on Facebook comment threads, the person that throws that incendiary comment out there loves it when people are pushing back against them. So let's try not to feed and let's have our children learn those skills also. Let's not feed that. We don't need to, let's just ignore it, move on. Mediation, I already kind of talked about restorative justice, but mediation is part of that. We can also make sure that we're saving evidence. It's kind of hard if it's like a Snapchat thing, but save comments that are made, say, in a text message thread. A lot of times when I'd be looking through comments or conversations, there'd be these obvious blank spots where just the conversation didn't make any sense. And you talk to the victim or you talk to the bully, and it turned out that they were deleting their comments as they were going through. That's really hard to get back unless we can subpoena phone records, and most of the time it doesn't rise to that level anyway. So that makes it really hard. If somebody is acting in a way that could be against community standards or could be in violation of whatever policy that a certain app has, there are functions with each one where you can report those people that are making these comments or threats or whatever they might be, and they might be able to be barred from those applications. We can still block people. We can block phone numbers. We can block friends, friend requests. We can block friends. We can remove them. So let's exercise that. Protect your passwords. This is something that I've had to have lots of conversations with juveniles. They would give their password to a friend so that the friend could get on their phone, but then that friend got on their phone and they sent threatening messages to so-and-so that they didn't like, but now it looked like the first person sent the messages. So protect your passwords, change them if they've become compromised. Let's not allow our friends to bully others, and let's share that with our children as well. We don't want to allow any of it to happen. If you see it, shed a light on it and make sure that we're voicing that. I don't condone what you're saying. This is not the way to deal with this confrontation. There's got to be a different way. Let's not allow our children to act in this way. And then what I always say too is we need to lead the way in that. If you read those comment threads, we are not doing a good job of leading the way in how we're treating each other. And then lastly, take phone if needed. Just some final thoughts before we get to the last question slide. We need to have that conversation with our spouse, with the child. Does the child need a phone? Or do they just want a phone because everybody else has one? Then I also want to impart that having a phone is a privilege. It's not something that you have to give a child. It's not child abuse. It's not neglect. You're not depriving your child of anything by not giving them a phone or not giving them access to social media. You are the parent. You can choose what these what your children are allowed to see, that kind of stuff. Make sure your kids are willing to share passwords with you. Make sure you know where the phone's kept at night, especially when you're sleeping. Kids can be pretty resourceful. Make sure your communication is on point with your child, and then know what the phone's going to be used for, what's it's allowed to be used for, and then set that standard and try to stick with it so that there's some continuity there. And then just the general overall understanding. Are they mature enough to know that what they put online is there forever? It doesn't matter if it's Snapchat and they thought that since it went away. It's out there somewhere, and people are sharing it around. So if it's an inappropriate picture, if it's a inappropriate comment, even if it's a threatening comment, things of that nature are going to be out there and out there forever. So I am almost right at 1 o'clock. That's pretty good. Were there any questions in relation to the material? I'm hearing none.
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay.
Deanne, feel free to stop recording too.
Okay. Can you see me again?